Great. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us for this really important conversation today. I want to first start out by thanking Commissioner Franz and my colleagues and friends, Jamal and Bill, for joining us. Now, in 2022, when the impacts of the climate crisis are more undeniable and more devastating than ever, from wildfires currently burning across Washington, Oregon, and much of the West, damaging property, ecosystems, and putting people's health and lives at risk, to the rising and warming and acidifying ocean waters across Washington's coast, it is disingenuous and simply irresponsible for Tiffany Smiley to say that she believes in climate change, but says the only way to address it is through local action. Now, I've spent my career fighting for federal climate action here in the nation's capital. As Vice President of Government Affairs of the League of Conservation Voters, I've been on the front lines of advocating for Congress and the Obama and now the Biden administrations to reduce carbon emissions at the scale science and justice demand, and to protect communities and our kids' future. I was fortunate enough to get to attend the International Climate Conference in 2015, where the historic Paris Climate Agreement was reached. And earlier this week, I was able to attend President Biden's event at the White House commemorating the passage of the historic Federal Inflation Reduction Act, which puts us on the path to cut our emissions in half by 2030, in line with the science and the global commitments we've made demand. Now, after the 2016 elections, it's true, we were horrified as President Trump pulled us out of the Paris Climate Agreement and rolled back climate and environmental laws while packing the courts with extreme right-wing judges. At that point, LCV doubled down on state and local action, launching our Clean Energy for All campaign with more than 30 state affiliates, including Washington conservation voters. And we've made remarkable progress here in Washington state and across the country. We are deeply proud of those efforts, but we've always understood that a crisis that is global in scale, that involves every sector of our economy, impacts all of our daily lives, could not be solved without the US government taking a leadership role again here, at home, and abroad. And that's why we're here today. That's why I'm here today, and why we're issuing our LCV Action Fund report to set the record straight, to push back when right-wing politicians like Tiffany Smiley try to pretend to be moderate and greenwash what are actually truly extreme and dangerous positions. Because claiming you're for climate action when qualifying it with a solution that is not a solution grounded either in reality or science means simply you are not for climate action. What it does mean is that you are trying to mislead voters about where you really stand in order to win an election. The science is clear. Our lived experiences are clear. Climate change is happening now with devastating impacts for our families and our communities. And the window is rapidly closing to stave off even more devastating impacts. And thankfully, the majority of Washingtonians know this, and that they know why Tiffany Smiley is desperate to sound reasonable when her positions are anything but. And that's why we're confident that voters will once again re-elect Senator Patty Murray, because she has spent her life and her career fighting for Washington's families, environment, and for climate action. Senator Murray played a leadership role in helping pass the biggest investment in clean energy and environmental justice in our country's history. And we are deeply grateful for her leadership, and it's her leadership that should be representing Washingtonians in DC. The Inflation Reduction Act is going to help us supercharge the clean energy economy in Washington state. It's going to build on the strong foundation of laws that you have passed here, including the Clean Energy Transformation Act, the Climate Commitment Act, healthy homes, clean buildings, and so much more. Now, federal legislation is also going to help hardworking families on their energy costs, create millions of good-paying family-sustaining jobs, and invest in low-wealth communities of color hit hardest by climate change and disproportionately harmed by the fossil fuel industry's toxic pollution. And it's thanks to the vision of leaders like Senator Murray that our nation is finally on a path to a more sustainable and equitable future, but we simply can't turn our back on that progress by electing dangerous politicians like Tiffany Smiley, who will side with polluters and not our communities. So with those opening remarks, it is my pleasure to now turn it over to my friend and colleague, Jamal Rod from Evergreen Action. Jamal?
Thanks, Sarah. I'm glad to be here with Bill and Commissioner Franz and my friend Sarah to have this important discussion. I'm Jamal Rod. I'm co-founder and executive director of Evergreen Action. a climate policy and advocacy group that was born out of Governor Jay Inslee's climate-focused presidential campaign. So as someone that has worked with both state government and federal government working on these issues, I know that we need a willing partner in the federal government acting boldly on climate change. I live here in Washington State. I'm from Olympia, Washington. Earlier this week, smoke from nearby wildfires contributed to hazardous and very unhealthy air quality across eastern, central, and western Washington. Growing up in Olympia, Washington, I never used to see smoke in the weather forecast, but as climate change worsens, it's becoming a more and more regular occurrence. There's now smoke season. Climate change is no longer a chart or a graph or happening in some far off future. It is the smoke we are choking on today in Western Washington. And we need a federal government that will act boldly and decisively on the defining crisis of our era. The scale of the challenge we face is too great for any of our leaders to abdicate responsibility, let alone as one as crucial as the senator from our state. Tiffany Smiley is making up excuses to do nothing, which is climate denial. Not acting is climate denial. The federal government has a crucial role to play in delivering real climate solutions, but Tiffany Smiley would prefer for the feds to leave local leaders high and dry to deal with the most important crisis of our era. The best way to actually fight this crisis is for local, state, and federal governments to all work together to protect our communities from the threats posed by climate change and seize the opportunity to make Washington a worldwide leader in the clean energy economy of the future. I am so proud and thankful that Senator Murray helped secure historic opportunity for state, local, and federal governments to work together to defeat climate change with her work to pass the Inflation Reduction Act last month. This is more than $370 billion in climate and clean energy investments that will supercharge America's clean energy industry, work to address environmental injustices, and save countless lives from out of control climate catastrophe. With this sign into law, we have major momentum in this fight against the climate crisis. We can't afford to take a step back with politicians like Tiffany Smiley, who would drop the ball on the most important fight of our lives. Instead, we need to seize this moment and ensure we implement this bill in a way that will benefit all Washingtonians and get to work, deliver more clean energy jobs, reduce deadly pollution, build more resilient communities, and combat rising energy costs. I'm proud to have worked with Senator Murray to get this historic bill across the finish line, and we look forward to working with her on climate solutions for Washington State for years to come. So with that, I will pass it along to Bill Arthur of the Sierra Club.
And the other NGO leaders here as well. My name is Bill Arthur. I'm the Conservation Vice Chair for the Washington chapter of the Sierra Club. And, you know, as has already been stated, global warming and its impacts are no longer a looming crisis. It's here. I drove from Spokane back to Seattle here just the other day, and you can smell the smoke from Spokane to Seattle and all points in between and all around the state. Our snowpack is diminished. It's affecting water supply, our fisheries, and our agriculture industry. Ocean acidification is impacting our shellfish. We have major episodes of extreme weather from heat domes to flooding. We need action at a pace, at a scope, and a scale to meet this challenge. And we need a senator who follows the science and is willing to support action at the scope and scale that's needed. That's what Senator Murray does. That's what Senator Murray continues to do. We need action at the national, the state, the local, and the international level. This is not something that can just be sort of left for chance. This is something that takes intentional work and serious investment. And it's imperative that we do that in order to decarbonize the energy system and the economy, and also to invest in restoring resilience to our ecosystems. The Inflation Reduction Act is, in fact, a significant down payment at the scope and the scale that is needed. It also creates good jobs, and it's building the economy of the future. And it's due to the leadership of people like Senator Murray and the good work that they did in passing it, that we have finally made this kind of significant and important step in enacting. Tiffany Smiley opposes these kinds of investments. We can't afford the shallow thinking and timid and inadequate approaches when confronting a crisis of the magnitude that we're in. You don't ask your neighbor to turn on their sprinkler when your fire is on house. You call the fire department and you ask for the best that we have that can be brought out. And that's why we need Senator Murray in the Senate. We need somebody that really understands the science. We need somebody who understands the scope of the challenge that we're trying to face and puts her shoulder to the wheel to make sure that we have the resources, the investment, and the actions that's necessary. You can't roll the dice with somebody who doesn't really understand what's going on. And Tiffany Smiley just doesn't have the experience or apparently the ability to understand what the crisis is that we're in. Thank you. And with that, I will pass the baton to our very excellent and very able Commissioner of Public Lands, Hillary Franz.
Thank you so much, Bill, and thank you to everyone who's joining us today. I really appreciate it. I'm the Commissioner of Public Lands for Washington State, and in my role, I oversee 2.6 million acres of aquatic land, 1 million acres of agricultural land, over 2 million acres of forest land, as well as the wildfire for the state, which is obviously of sort of utmost prominence right now, given what we've been experiencing. You know, in my work, I say it all the time, we are truly on the front lines of climate change every single day, from the sea level rise and ocean acidification that is impacting our salmon and our shellfish habitat, to the dust storms and drought that we're experiencing on our 1 million acres of agricultural land, to the 2.8 million acres of forest in Washington State alone that are already dead and dying, that are leading to these catastrophic wildfires year after year that is choking our skies and threatening our communities. You know, smoke and wildfire know no boundaries, whether it's local, state, federal lands, or other state jurisdictional boundaries. We are truly all in this together. Washington is not alone in facing the climate crisis. Every single year, my agency is sending resources to Alaska, Montana, California, Oregon, Idaho, New Mexico, and even to other countries like BC and Australia. And they each do the same to us. On the fire line, we have a local, state, and federal firefighters working hard, putting their lives on the line to save our forests and save our communities. And without this mutual aid, we would all truly be in trouble. We truly must work together to save ourselves. We call it the all hands, all lands approach. That's what it's called in firefighting, all lands, all hands approach, where we work together across boundaries, across agencies, across jurisdictions to accomplish a common goal of putting out catastrophic wildfires and saving lives. And more than ever, we need an all hands, all lands approach to addressing climate change. We need all our state, local, federal resources to help respond to our rapidly changing climate and to truly change the current trajectory we're on. When you think about the far-reaching nature of this climate challenge, no one state, no one city alone can turn the corner on it. We need effective federal policy and investments to achieve the deep, long-term reductions in U.S. greenhouse gas emissions and to help strengthen the climate resilience across the U.S. economy down at every single level, local and state. And the federal government policy and investments that have now been coming forward will actually accelerate progress already being made by cities and states and even companies across the United States. States and local governments are struggling right now to respond to not just the growing climate challenge, but also numerous other crises, including housing, mental health, healthcare, education, and a growing recession. They can't do it alone. They need truly the investments that the federal government is stepping up and finally making. Federal government investments in climate change will help state and local governments make the critical investments in that climate adaptation and mitigation. It will also truly accelerate the transition of our national economy to a cleaner, greener economy. Specifically, that Inflation Reduction Act provides the largest federal investment ever in addressing our greatest greenhouse gas contributions, transportation, and our energy grid. It is for Washington State as well as for the rest of the United States. And it will finally bring the critical investments in cleaning our energy and transportation sector. Both the infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act will also strengthen the nation's resilience and save taxpayer money. It helps communities safeguard against the extreme weather events that we're not just seeing every 10 years, but we are seeing every single year, from the catastrophic wildfires, the floods, and other climate-related disasters. And it has to be remembered that every one of those disasters has an incredible cost, not just for the state, but for the federal government. More than $145 billion in damages from the biggest 20 disasters alone. And the reality is we're going to pay for it anyways. And the question is, do we pay for it in a reaction mode? We are literally running from one fire to the next, or do we pay for it in true investments that are going to be proactive, helping grow our clean energy economy, helping address our greatest environmental crisis and social and economic crisis of our lifetime, climate change, and truly create the resiliency we need economically, socially, and environmentally? I believe this is the decisive decade for the world to confront climate change and avoid the most worst irreversible impact. And no one city or state can do it alone. It will truly take every single city, state, and our federal government acting together to truly rise to the greatest challenge of our lifetime. And thankfully, the investments that Senator Murray and Congress have made with this law and the earlier laws that passed last year, we are finally able to start to step up to this moment, this challenge, by accelerating our transition to clean energy, clean air, clean water, and a clean environment, not city by city, not state by state, but as a nation together. All hands, all lands, working together across boundaries, across agencies, across jurisdictions, we will finally have a chance to accomplish the common goal of saving our environment, saving our communities, and saving our children's future. Thank you.
All righty, thanks so much. I'm going to open things up to press. If anyone has questions, please just use the raise hand function or send a message in the chat and say your name and outlet if anyone has questions. All righty, doesn't look like there are questions, so we can go ahead and hop off the call. Thank you so much to our speakers, and thanks everyone for your time.
Thank you, everyone.